There are scenes that are now happening daily in towns and cities across the country. In Bristol, there were clashes as police tried to keep apart a group of far-right protesters and much a larger anti-fascist counter. Protest it felt unpredictable and confrontational and tense at so many places in the last few days. The police right in the middle of the disorder in Hull city center. Another standoff between a large group of protesters and police. Some were filmed taking a piece of scaffolding apparently to use a missile, and what's become the soundtrack for many taking part in this protest. We it now, we want our country back now. This is what residents saw after riots and bins were set all light. By the evening, there was just the sound of the alarms in shops that have been broken into, the street littered with the debris of a rampage through the city. In Liverpool, two officers came under attack from a far-right mobile. Here as elsewhere, a number of officers were injured. Police is running battles with some of those in the city streets, and this just a few miles from Southport, where the attack on children at a dance class seemingly lit the fuse as a mobile came rounding down the street. About an hour ago, shops were forced to close. This area was locked down. It's a measure of the impact these incidents are having on towns and cities, and of course most of all on the police trying to deal with them. And the big question, of course, is how long will this go on for? Similar scenes in Nottingham, big bottles thrown as fighting broke out, and in Blackpool where more fighting erupted in the crowd. Their loyalty is very clear. Any person organizing or taking part in the processing in committing an offense in Belfast to hotel housing migrants was the target, leading to clashes with police. More than 2 dozen protests have taken place across the country. Last night it was Sunderland that saw the worst of the violence at streets bearing the scars. Today Northumbria police released this image of officers. Police released this image of officer at a house where they believe some of those involved in the disorder were. 2 people were arrested. There are warnings to those responsible. They will face action. The police need to lead operation in communities across the country where there has been both violent disorder and thuggery on the streets, which is completely unacceptable, completely damaging, and where the police need to know they have our full support, taking the strongest possible action, making sure that these criminals face the full force of the law. In Manchester today, a supermarket was ransacked by a mobile as they ran for police. But the city also saw one of the many counter protests today, anti-fascist marching with their message, a sense that some are not willing to stand by as the wave of summer violence rolls on, among others. This is the side that people come to Liverpool for, don't they? But what they see today is something unbelievable, and something they probably want to forget, because not long ago it was riot once we got the police helicopter still circling above us there. Then I am starting to clear up a bit and reopening some of the roads they closed earlier, but it's been such an afternoon of tension. It's been frightening. It's been unpredictable, starting at 2 when there was that static protest just outside the historic Olivia building, and the counter protester came along, and before we knew if they were shouting each other, chanting against each other, and then riot police formed this wall, this barrier in between them to try and just calm things down, and then this mandatory just shot off around the outside and then ran through the sea of the city here, and then we saw those violent clashes. We saw the police sort of with a tug of water, they going forwards and backward between police and the pro-protesters for about 2 hours. It was, and it felt very unpredictable. It felt quite unsafe, and as you say, amongst those tourists who come there, every summer people from abroad, we seen families here, and they looked terrified to be caught up in this disorder. So starting with that rival protesters who were challenging each other, and then became this disorder where we saw bricks, we saw bottles, we saw chairs thrown at police. We saw one woman, she went off a female police officer. She been badly hit by a chair, so she was led off by a colleague. We know that number of police officers were hurt in this disorder. Now Merseyside police have tonight condemned that violence. They say a number of their officers have been injured. They said they won't put up with this sort of criminal behavior. In the last few moments, reopened some of these roads. Of the traffic is now flowing freely again. Earlier it was a gridlock, and people were terrified in their cars, wondering what on earth was going on. So that calming down things is getting back to normal. It's hard to say. It's not because those protesters were angry. They left about half an hour or so ago, and the prime minister, as we heard earlier tonight, said the police have this full support to tackle extremists who are attempting to head by attacking communities, people, her tourists in particular, hopeful that disorder is over.